After I started recording again, we will jump back where we were. Let me share that screen again. Ooh, okay, that was rough. I know that little echo was too much for me. So anyway, out of the almost 72 million youth population, up to 50% of them were considered to be at risk. And there's a continuum of how much a child can be at risk, where it can be minimal, where you're talking about the slightest issue, the slightest chance of them having issues down the road. Remote to high, and then imminent is pretty much a very good chance of them having issues down the road as far as future negative outcomes. And then at risk category activity, that means they're actually involved in something like gang activities, selling drugs, something like that. They are actively engaged in bad behavior. So youth in high and imminent categories often exhibit maladaptive behaviors. That's one of those fancy words that are just here. It just means inappropriate, unacceptable equals maladaptive. And there's different types. We have internalized maladaptive behaviors, where you see kids that show avoidance. They don't want to do certain things, maybe skipping school, locking themselves in their room all the time, which is also shown in the next one, social withdrawal. That is an internalized maladaptive behavior. Depression and anxiety, those are also things that you feel inside. And a lot of times these things that are shown to be internalized manifest themselves externally in things like acting out, aggression, and anger. Things like that play a role in how these internalized factors are shown publicly, externally. So, at-risk youth and their environment. Their ecological system is, we're talking about the importance of the person and their environment and the interaction between that. What does that do to them and their possibilities of success or failure, or good things or bad things happening to them? So the definition of an ecological system is basically just the relationship between an organism and its environment. And we're talking about what settings they're in, the people that they are around, what kind of culture they live in, and even the amount of education that they may have. That's kind of a person's ecological system. So what we look at is positive youth development, and basically it focuses on youth's potential, not youth problems. We talked about how we talk to a person, not to the disability. We look at children with trying to find their potential, not the maladaptive things that they may be doing. It's an optimistic concept, and it focuses on unique talents, strengths, interests, and potential, things like that. That's basically, in a nutshell, what we're looking at here. We're looking for characteristics like unique talents and strengths. It's not a weakness-based development. We're looking at strength-based and trying to build off of those things. So the purpose of therapeutic recreation, we work as partners with other disciplines to help to foster positive youth development. And we're looking at their right to leisure. Everybody has a right to leisure and recreation. We're trying to make sure that they have the best quality of life that they can possibly have. We want to make sure that they understand that they have some self-determination where they can make some of their own choices, and teach them how to make the right ones instead of inappropriate ones if possible. And, you know, we talked about the whole API process where we go through assessment, planning, implementation, evaluation. You can go through this whole setup with children that are at risk to try to improve their situation. So, theories that guide therapeutic recreation practice. There are things like looking at the ecological perspective. We talked about that's, you know, their interactions with their environment. And this emphasizes evaluating what circumstances are going on and how their environment that surrounds them is influencing their individual behaviors. You know, what's going on in their life to cause things to not go as well as they could. And as far as therapeutic recreation with youth, again, we want to use interventions that work toward positive person environmental interactions, you know, the person and their environment, which is who they're around, where they are, by enhancing human relatedness, making sure that they realize that they have a lot in common with other people. You know, if you see people that are anxious, withdrawn, things like that, then they may need help with this human relatedness to see that they have things in common. Competence, you want to give them activities and things to do that they actually can complete successfully. Again, like I say, there's a tough balance there, finding enough challenge, yet making it where they are able to complete things and feel that, you know, hey, I did it. That's, everybody always feels good when they complete something. You want to make sure that they don't fail, especially in this situation with kids who already have low self-esteem and issues like that. Self-direction, again, help them to learn that they can make choices that are positive choices by giving them some replacement behaviors, some things that aren't, you know, involved with situations that get them in trouble. And self-esteem, that goes along with the competence. We're trying to increase their self-esteem. A lot of these kids don't have confidence, and they don't have the urge to even be around other people a lot of times because of the stressors that they have going on in their life. So by providing them opportunities, whether it's individually where they can find success and build their self-esteem, you know, set some goals that they can reach. Or if it's by having them work with a team and come together as a team and complete something, that also can help to build self-esteem. And that's probably a good choice for these kids who in a lot of cases are withdrawn. Another theory that guides therapeutic recreation practice is the social capital theory. And excuse me, social capital, it basically just suggests that human beings fare better when they're bonded together. Human beings that are around other humans do better than those that isolate themselves. In general, they're going to have better lives. That's what the social capital theory is all about. So youth that have more social bonds, they have social networks that support their success. So they've got a fan club. When they do things that are appropriate and good, they're going to get positive feedback from their friends. Key factors are reciprocity. Basically, everybody plays a role and all contributions are respected. That's what reciprocity stands for. Trust needs to be there. And we're looking at mechanisms for connecting youth, parents, teachers, police, recreation professionals, church members, all to one another for the benefit of these kids. The anomie theory and hopelessness. There's a figure 11.2 on page 173 that you can check out. Basically what this is just a feeling of a lack of purpose or identity that leads people to detach from society. not a good feeling, not a good thing to have. So anomie theory is just wanting to be withdrawn. It leads to hopelessness and alienation. Most of the time, self-imposed, they alienate their self because they feel detached from society. They don't have this sense of purpose. And once they become detached and hopeless like this, it can lead to delinquency in youth. Another theory is hope and optimism. These things, hope and optimism, they serve as protective factors. Hope and optimism are talking about attitudinal strength. Their attitude is good. They're optimistic. It's going to give them internal strength. They serve as protective factors to keep them from falling into this at-risk behavior that we're talking about. And you see that about 20% of youth experience clinical depression by the time of graduation. That's pretty high. And I would think right now, with everything going on, the pandemic, all these changes, that it's surely higher than that currently. So 20% have clinical depression. Now that's, clinical depression is serious enough that you need some sort of intervention, really. Same thing, you see similar rates for anxiety and suicide attempts even. So this hope and optimism is a good theory to try to promote for kids, to make them have those things as much as possible. So some things that we can do through recreation therapy, we provide them activities that help them to build competence, help them get better at something that makes them feel better about themselves, more optimistic, and have more hope that they can learn more things. Again, provide appropriate challenge. Like I say, there's a fine balance there between too difficult that they're not going to be able to complete, and not difficult enough so to the point that it is almost insulting. It would be giving you a 6th grade reading book rather than a college age reading book. It's just, you have to challenge people appropriately. You let them take active roles in their decision making, and you create opportunities for flow. And we're going to talk about that. And that's an important word. And if you're marking any notes here or anything, you need to know what the word flow means moving forward. Flow is an intensely absorbing, self-rewarding enjoyment experience. And basically what it means is, this isn't therapeutic recreation, but if you are engaged in a game of 2-on-2 basketball, and it's you and 3 of your buddies that are playing, and y'all are talking trash, and you are playing, and you want to win so you can brag, and 2-on-2, you don't have much time to lollygag. You are having to actively stay with your man the whole time. 2-on-2 basketball will run you to death. Anyway, when you are doing that, if you're actively engaged in playing a, grudge match 2-on-2 basketball game, you are not thinking about your problems at home. You're thinking about not letting Jimmy score. You are not thinking about where your next meal is going to come from while you are actively engaged in this game. If you are intensely absorbed into it like you would have to be to enjoy it and to possibly win, then you're going to be in a sense of flow, as it's called. You'll be totally encompassed by what you're doing. And that's what you want to reach with your activities, is you want people to reach this sense of flow where they are not thinking about other things and problems and issues that they have. They're with you. Their thoughts are where you want them to be by what you've given them to work on. They're going to be absorbed in what you're doing, lessen self-awareness. You know, like if it's someone who's anxious, if they're absorbed in the activity you're doing, they're not going to be as aware of their anxiety. It's a state of deep involvement and concentration. You lose track of time, and a lot of time speeds up, as it says here. You know, like they say, time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you're in flow also. And something you see is at the end of it, you have a feeling of joy and accomplishment by being absolutely absorbed with what you're doing. So that's a challenge as a recreation therapist, to find activities that you can get your people to dive into enough to kind of reach some of this description of what flow is. So there's a continuum of services that happens also. It starts with prevention, and primary prevention is where we're trying to reduce the number of new cases of identified problems or conditions that occur within the youth population. We're trying to cut it off up front. Secondary prevention is when we actually are able to work with them early. You have early intervention and early recognition. Third is tertiary prevention, where they get treatment and rehabilitation. They've gone farther down the continuum. They need more help. So primary, that is cutting it off before anything even happens. Secondary, you know, someone is starting to be, looks like they're looking into the gang lifestyle, but they haven't done anything yet. That's where you step in at that point in early intervention and recognition and try to cut that off before they get to the next step, and you have to go into tertiary prevention. From there, you move into intervention, and there's a figure 11.3 in the book that is good about showing whether something is prevention or whether it's an intervention. There's some universal approaches that can be used as interventions. They're available for everybody, not just people that are considered at risk. There's selected approaches like Head Start. Lower income families are more at risk for problems. It's just by rule. That's basically what we've seen through research. Booster sessions, they enhance the effectiveness of interventions by adding a longer term element that helps make it more effective. Then you've got indicated approaches. I know this stuff is a little dry and long, but it's part of the whole picture of services that we can give. Indicated approaches, they target children that are imminently at risk. They're at imminent risk level or already exhibiting at-risk behavior. So they're indicated by the fact that they're already showing issues. Then there's second chance interventions. These are for kids that have already had troubles. We're talking about substance abuse, violence, dropouts, early pregnancy, things like that. They can be, an early pregnancy can be something that can stress a youth out as well, obviously. So as far as attaining outcomes, we want to look at how effective that goal-oriented after-school programs are. They are very beneficial for youth. They learn leadership skills. If they're goal-oriented as they should be, they get feelings of competence. It improves self-esteem. Those are some things that you see from after-school programs. There's a study that's been done that recreation Prevention supports, okay, not prevention. Recreation supports the development of self-esteem. Scratch out the prevention there. Don't scratch it, but just remember that that word is not really supposed to be there. I'm not sure how that, I'm sure I typed it in, but I shouldn't have. Community development, that strengthens bonds within their neighborhood, good bonds that you need for youth that are at risk. Some other outcomes that we look for is having a positive environmental change shown through recreation, formal recreation. We talked about after-school programs. They need to be goal-oriented and they need to be positive in nature. And we need for people to see that they have a need for empowerment, where they have more control over their lives. You're asking the participants and their parents what sort of positive changes they're looking for out of recreation therapy. When they're able to give you some of their own thoughts, then they're going to buy into what you're doing more so than if they're not able to do that. So some settings that we've seen for therapeutic recreation. We've talked about interdisciplinary collaborative approaches already. You know, a lot of times recreation therapists will work with social workers, school staff, parents, different groups like that, to help collaborate to make children find a better path. As far as public parks and recreation department programs, these are just some examples, and they're in the book. Project Brave, that provided domestic violence workshops for people who had that sort of issue going on in their life. The Young First Offender program, that had 3 hours of community service and 3 hours of supervised recreation for first-time misdemeanor offenders. That was a way for them to pay their debt in a positive way. Not only did they do community service, but then on top of that, as part of their deal, they got some supervised recreation that was positive in nature. Phoenix Activity City, PAC, that was free after-school programming where they went over things like life skills, education support, and even things like healthy living, diet, nutrition, things like that. Some community-based special recreation collaboration. The Northern Illinois Special Recreation Association, that provided programs for youth with mental health concerns. It gave them chances for leisure education, skill development, self-esteem, things like that. The McHenry County Mental Health Board, they did free Saturday programming for at-risk youth from 6 to 13 years old. Now, I'm not going to ask you these specifically or anything on the test. These are just some good examples of, you know, community-based collaborative efforts to help kids. Public Park and Recreation Department programs to help kids. Adventure therapy is a very, very good choice. You know, adventure therapy is usually outdoor experiential activities. What would you guys think of as something being adventure therapy? Anybody have something?
Hiking.
Hiking, especially if it was, you know, difficult terrain. What else? I need 2 more.
Those like fake rock wall climbing things.
Mm-hmm. That could absolutely count. Or even real rock climbing. That would definitely be an adventure.
A ropes course or a zip lining course?
Yes, absolutely. Ropes course was one I was thinking of for sure. And that's actually seen in a lot of therapeutic recreation settings. And it's very specialized. You get training specifically in how to do the different things. It's really a pretty cool thing to learn. Have a lot of you gone through or been at a ropes course? It's good team building. You have to figure out ways to get across, without anybody touching the ground, things like that. You have to trust your teammates. So you see how a lot of the things that could happen at a ropes course could be positive for these kids. They get to succeed as a team. They're working with other people. When you're trying to solve a problem, they're going to reach that flow state where they're thinking about, everybody's given what they think they should do. You're probably going to hit that state of flow, where you're going to feel not be thinking about what's going on at home. So that's a good thing. Whitewater rafting, bungee jumping. There's all sorts of different adventure therapy, but it's usually outdoor. It's usually some sort of, high adventure experience. The juvenile justice system. This is for people that are under the age of 18. There's a 1.8 million a year that are processed in about 4,000 juvenile courts. And what happens is recreation therapy can find and educate people that are actually in the juvenile justice system to find replacement behaviors. That's a big thing that therapeutic recreation does. Once they've reached this stage of being in the juvenile justice system, we need to find some appropriate replacement behaviors, that are recreation and leisure based, because that's what we work with, to where when they get back out into the system, maybe they'll go with those options instead. Now, is that going to work with everybody? Absolutely not. But if it works with a quarter of them that you talk to, is it worth it? It is to me. If you're helping one out of every four, of course you want 100%, but you just do what you can do. Some special concerns. Child maltreatment or just mistreatment. Children who have a history of abuse or neglect, they may have situations that are almost like PTSD in nature, where they're going to have certain things that you may not want to do with them. It might set off a trigger in them. So it's just something to think about if you're dealing with children who have a history of abuse. And that's why, when we talked about the whole API process, assessment, planning, implementation, when you get assessment up front, that's the sort of information that you need to find out before you start trying to get into figuring out what you're going to do with your patients. Learning and behavioral disorders. Let's go back. The scope of service for therapeutic recreations, we're going to do assessment of them, try to give them some education, prevention of these things happening in the future, and we're looking to promote their well-being, giving them some coping mechanisms, and a big thing is resource awareness. We don't think about that as being part of what we do as recreation therapists. We're not only providing activities, so to speak, we're also providing them with education of how to do activities, education as far as what activities are out there, education as far as what activities would be a good replacement behavior for the maladaptive things that they are currently doing. So education is a big part of what we do as recreation therapists. Also, we have kids with learning and behavioral disorders. By definition, we're talking about problems with learning, problems with motor skills, difficulty with communication. ADHD could be in this fit, dyslexia. And a big thing that happens here is they need to have early intervention to make a better transition to adulthood. Some of the intervention approaches that are seen with youth that fit under these learning and behavior disorders try to prevent and remediate maladaptive or bad behaviors, prevent them if possible by cutting them off. And if they're already engaged in this, then we're trying to find replacement behaviors to get rid of those. We want to assess what skills they have and what skills they need and try to help them to acquire those skills. And we also, now we're talking about people with learning and behavioral disorders. What sort of confidence level do you think they're sitting at? High or low? Pretty low for the most part, you know. So we want to facilitate confidence and enhance their self-esteem. That's something that we've seen across the board through this chapter with, I mean, we want to do that with anybody that we work with is, you know, enhance their self-esteem. Just take it away from youth for a moment and think of someone who's at a substance, you know, alcohol or drug abuse rehabilitation facility. Is their self-esteem real high? No, it's not either. So as recreation therapists, we want to do things that are going to help people to increase their confidence, enhance their self-esteem, and feel better about themselves. And that will, by feeling better about themselves, they will be less likely to engage in bad behaviors. There's been an increasing interest in youth development with clearly defining the meaning of youth development and recreation services. So they're starting to put more things in place, and there's more of a niche for dealing with youth in therapeutic recreation than there used to be. And by creating specialized educational degrees, focusing on specific youth services. This is growing. Services for the elderly are growing, and so are services for the youth. So we hit the whole gamut. And then these, I will let you, prior to the test, it would be a good idea to look through these discussion questions. But we're not going to go through them today. I think we've hit enough. I see people yawning. My voice is trying to go away, so we're just going to cut it right here today. And we'll talk about chapter 12 in the next class. So I appreciate you guys being here. I hope you have a good rest of the day, and I will see y'all next time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.